just being able to have a more natural relationship with food and not have to plan everything around it. Having the freedom to socialize, to go out to eat without having the guilt, without having all of the extra stuff that comes with it, has been really, really life-changing.
Hi, my friends. Welcome back. Today we have a really special episode for you that I'm really excited to bring to you. We are hearing from someone who started probably where you are at today, having done diet after diet. She had done a diet that made her afraid of eating carrots and corn because she was told it was too high in sugar. She spent her entire adult life trying to lose weight, hoping that achieving a certain body would make her feel healthier, happier, more confident. And she hit a point where she just could not even think about going on another diet. She was approaching her 40s and thought, do I really want to spend the next 40 years of my life living this way? And when she heard about intuitive eating, she had a lot of doubt, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety about losing that sense of control that you have on diets, because it really does give you a false sense of control. And even in the face of the fear and the self-doubt, she knew that if I don't do something about this now, if I keep going down the same path that I've been going down for most of my adult life, nothing will change. And so she decided, I need to do something different, even if it goes against what I've always believed when it comes to dieting. I need to do something different because I can't keep living this way. And so this client, she is a past Food Freedom Academy member, is here to tell you about her experience on her intuitive eating journey, what she learned, some of the lessons that she took away, and she's here to really share with you what it's like as someone who had done all the diets, who was so skeptical, to do the work of healing your relationship with food and your body. And so I'm really excited for you guys to hear. And as we get into today's episode, this is just a reminder, this is coming out on Monday, May 1st, brand new month. That means that there are 5 days left to send in your application for Food Freedom Academy before we close down the applications and we start serving our new members. And so if you're even curious about how this program could help you, then you can head to sabrinamangao.com/academy to apply. And I would love to chat with you. So without further ado, enjoy today's episode. Why don't you start by telling us where you were before you signed up for Food Freedom Academy just a couple of months ago? Like, where was your mindset at? Where were you in your dieting journey? Like, what did your life look like?
I won't say, like, the year before, I had finished like my latest meal plan, which was probably the most extreme one that I've done. It was one where, carrots and corn had too much sugar, so you don't eat those. It was very limited, a very strict diet. And I had lost weight, but it was not a sustainable way of living. And at that point, it was really impacting my socialization because you can't, people don't invite you because you're gonna not eat what they'll prepare. Like, it's more complicated if you're included, I'll say. So, it was a very low point in the sense that I knew logically that it wasn't something that I could do forever. The idea was, okay, I just need to lose, the X amount of pounds, and once that's done, I'll eat normally again and just be happy. But then when I started eating again, it was, eating everything in sight because I had been restricting for a while. So at that point, it was, gaining the weight back and just being over diets. And it was really just wanting to be able to live what I deem to be like a normal life, like not needing to think about every meal in advance and, waking up in the morning needing to think about supper because what I'll be making for that meal will impact how I'll eat the rest of the day, or, things like that. So it was really just needing to do something that was a life change, that was a sustainable life change. And I'll say that's where like it was a low point because I was also at my heaviest. So body image, like there was so many issues
Mm-hmm.
that had to be dealt with. I'll say dealt with.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a pretty low point.
And at that point, you mentioned that last year you had done this. I remember you telling me about this diet and like you were afraid of eating carrots because it was too high in sugar. How long, if you look at the entire span of your life, how long was food and your weight like a big, major concern in your life?
Well, I was never a skinny person, I'll say, and that's just, you know, bone structure wise. Like, you mentioned in the program, like if you fit a size 7 shoe, you can't try to fit in a size 5. Well, I've never been a size 2, and I'm not framed to be a size 2. Um, but I'll say, like, from a pretty young age, you realize that I developed quite early. So I was always a bit more advanced. So there was bullying because, your body changes before. And, when you're young, kids can be mean. So there was always a bit of that, like getting hips and getting curves and stuff when you're younger and, being the first one. So, but I've really dieting, I'll say it was a good few decades, like more than half my life, that dieting, the yo-yos, like, the different programs, you do it for a while, it goes well, then you stop, and then you start again. But it's, you know, like, for example, Weight Watchers, like it's, something that I've done different times throughout my life, but it's, it was never the same, like it was never as successful as the first time, right? There's always, you get a bit disenchanted with the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
you get over it, right?
Mhm.
So
Well, it's
yeah.
because it's no longer this novel new thing that
Yeah,
gives you hope, right? Because that's really what the thing is when you jump from one diet to another. It's always the same. It's always a diet. It's always diet culture, but your mind convinces you that this time is going to be different because I haven't tried this before. So you have all of this hope that this is going to be the thing that's going to give you all of these promises that diet culture promises you.
exactly. And when you've done it already and you realize that, well, okay, I lost the 10 pounds, but then I put it again, like, over months, like it doesn't happen overnight, but at one point you don't have the same, you don't go in it with the same level of, like you say, hope,
Hmm.
right? And it was always with, okay, I need to lose that 10, 15, 20 pounds, whatever it was, and then I'll be happy, then I'll be able to eat normally. But that's never what happens. Once you start eating normally, it starts gradually, right? Oh, well, one cheat day, it starts with one cheat day, and then it's, oh, well, the weekends, like I'll be good during the week and the weekends, and then it always evolves from that, because with the restricting, you and it's all things that logically. Again, that was the thing for me. I'm an accountant. Like I joke that the side of my brain that I use, it's the logical part, right? And it's not what we should be doing. Not being able to eat carrots or certain vegetables because there's too much sugar can't be the answer, right? Like, my intent wasn't to be a bodybuilder or a supermodel, like it was just to eat healthy. But if you're restricting the type of vegetables or fruit, like there's nothing wrong with those
Those
food groups or
foods.
those type of,
Yeah, I remember when I was doing
story.
paleo, and paleo doesn't allow you to eat things like oats and beans, and I remember just like intuitively it not making sense. Like I just didn't it didn't make sense to me. Oats are healthy for you, beans are super good for you, but because that's what that diet tells me I can't eat, then you just kind of go along with it and you're going against what your gut is telling you. Um
Absolutely. And you have I mean, friends and family, they're trying to be supportive, although you can tell that, I mean, my husband would say, like, what do you mean you can't eat carrots? Like, so
Hmm.
you try, and it's like trying to be supportive, but and and at one point he made a comment, and I think that's what kind of snapped me out of it. He's like, you've been, you're a healthy person, like you still eat a various different type of fruits and vegetables and a very varied diet. And he said, like, you would have never, like, the old you 5 years ago would have never done this, like my latest meal plan, like, Weight Watchers and different type of things that I had tried. It was, I mean, vegetables were 0 points and whatever, so I would eat a lot. And it's like you would have never done like it was all protein and like a small amount of yogurt and protein for breakfast. Like, that's not a breakfast. Like,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
wrong with having an egg and toast?
And that's the
So
thing with each new diet, it gets more and more extreme because you like pick up on the rules of the first diet. So let's say the first diet you do says you can't have carbs. So now in your mind, you've associated carbs to something bad. And then the second diet you do tells you that you can only eat between noon and 8. So now you have two sets of rules. You still, even though you might not be actively cutting out the carbs, you still think that the carbs are bad. And now you can only eat between 12 and 8. And then the next thing that you do, you're counting your points. So now you're thinking of point, carbs, and time of the day. And so that's why over time, people feel like the more I do diets, the more obsessed and overwhelmed and confused I feel around food, because you're not just following the one rule, the one set of rules. You're following the 20 different sets of rules that you accumulated over the decades, like you said, of dieting.
well, and and with all the the studies that we've listened and the modules and all of that, like the more dieting you've done, the more it takes for you to lose weight. So it needs to be more extreme than the last one for it to work. Because, it's like, I remember in my 20s, you'd think of dieting and you'd lose a few pounds, right? But now it's like, no, listen, like, you need to very strictly follow, and then you step on the scale and it's 0.3 pounds that you lost in that week. And that is so impactful on the rest of your day, the rest of your week, when you see that you're not getting good results because your metabolism changes, like everything is impacted, right? So, knowing now the impacts, that's what it has. And it ends up that you need to be more extreme to see the results that you want.
Yeah.
Oh, it's short term, and you end up, you're hungry. You feel
Yeah.
like you're hungry all the time.
Yeah, and so I'm curious, like when you look at the decades that you've spent dieting, how did you feel during that time? What kind of things were you saying to yourself?
It was to be healthy, right? It was always because it was the association of a smaller body being healthy. And you want to be, I still want to be healthy, right? So it was always in my mind was to be healthy, even when it was extreme, working out 6 7 days a week. And then, oh well, you can see better results if you work out twice a day. And then it was always for the exterior. It was never really the thought wasn't behind how it was making me feel. So, I think that's why it was always the yo-yo, right? It was, doing workouts that I hated. I never plan on doing another burpee in my life.
Same.
Right? I don't think it's necessary. I can do other type of things, the other type of exercises to, be healthy.
Hmm.
And, when you don't like what you're doing and you do it so often, it's not going to be something you're going to be able to maintain because you're not enjoying it. And life is too short to do that. So,
Yeah.
that's what I find is ultimately it was to be healthy, but it ended up having the reverse effect.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you were going through that, what do you feel was the damage that you incurred, whether that was the social damage, the emotional trauma, the damage on your relationships. Like, what did it cost you to spend so much time in diet culture?
Definitely the social aspect, because you see that, oftentimes people reunite over a meal. That's in many different cultures, and it can be family, it can be friends. So, going to a restaurant and, being anxious of what I was going to order, what would people think, or you're socializing at work and you're looking at everyone else's plate to make sure you don't take more or less, or you're always thinking of everything except just spending time with the people that you're with, and enjoying spending time with them, because we're all so busy and we don't see each other often. Um, so it would definitely, and like I say, at one point it's like it gets complicated to have a meal where, if it's at someone's house or someone wants to, you're hosting, or what do you cook for others when you're so restricted in what you can make,
Hmm.
or what will they make for you if you, so it has an impact on how much you see other people.
Yeah.
And
And even when you are with those people, how much you're actually present mentally with those people.
well, you've barely had your plate where it's like, okay, well, dessert, like what's going to happen, and then they're going to have a dessert and not, and what am I going to do, like if I have a dessert, like even if I would really want to, and so it's all of these things running through your mind all the time, when it's like you should just be there and enjoy it.
Isn't it kind of crazy that like we go after these diets hoping that it's going to make us lose weight and feel good about our bodies, and basically we're doing it for these other people so that we feel more loved and accepted, and in the process what we do is we actually isolate ourselves from the very people that we're trying to gain approval from and become less social. All these things that we think we're going to get through dieting, we actually make worse.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, because
Hmm.
it's always the end state that you're looking for, right? It's like, when I get to that point, like when I'm a size X, that's when I will start living my best life. But that's never what ends up happening,
Yeah.
right?
Because
And
even
then,
when you get to that size, you hated yourself every step of the way. And so you get there and it's never enough.
no, because you didn't work, it was solely the exterior. You didn't do any work on, doing things that you actually enjoy, or doing it in a healthy way, eating things that you love. So if you're restricting all the time, and I would, the expression, living off of lettuce, carrots, and love, like
Yeah.
you're basically not eating a whole lot to
Hmm.
get there. And then when you get there, it's like, oh, well, I'm going to reward myself with this. And it ends up being a binge, or it ends up being something, or, you go out, it's not a size that's maintainable for your body shape, but you're so happy that you got there, you go and you buy a whole new wardrobe, all of these pretty clothes that you're so excited to wear, but then you gain 5 pounds, because that's probably your set point where you should be, and then nothing fits, but then you hate yourself because nothing fits, and then, so it's the cycle that you keep doing to yourself, really.
Yeah.
But it's always about the end state that's never sustainable.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, at what point did you learn about intuitive eating or my program? Did you know about intuitive eating before you joined Food Freedom Academy, before you knew about me? Like, what was that turning point for you when you, because it's a scary moment when you decide I've dedicated my entire life to dieting and coming to terms with the fact that that doesn't work and I need to try something different. Like, what was that like shift for you?
It was before Christmas last year. So, and it was on Facebook. Like, I hadn't heard of intuitive eating. It wasn't something that, but you know how your social media feed, it's like if you click on certain things, that's like all the ads that you see.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, all of these diet things that you kind of click on. And at one point, there was a post for it was a 1 week challenge, I believe, for you. So it's like, well, that's interesting. And so I did that, and it was a daily something every day or every other day, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very much intrigued by the concept. So I went out and bought the book, but it was very scary. It was, my idea was, okay, well, I need to do something different. I can't keep living my life like this. And at one point in one of the videos, it was, okay, well, the next phase of your life, and I had a milestone birthday in January, so it's like, okay, well, do I want to do this for another 40 years, like the yo-yo dieting and it's like, no, I can't, like, I can't I can't keep doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my introduction. It was like the 1 week. It was very scary because if you don't have the parameters, like, the program gives you guidelines and it gives you things to follow, so it's very clear. And having the capacity, or like, being allowed to eat everything that you want is very scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, because we had our conversation, it was like late November, early December, and the program started in January. And I had the mindset of intuitive eating, and that's what I'm going to do. So I kind of went out and started buying things that I hadn't bought in a long
Yeah.
time. And it was like, okay, too much too soon. Because I did gain a bit of weight, and it was like, okay, well, this isn't what I want.
Yeah.
But when you follow the program, that's when things start being clear, right? It's not just an idea of I don't think I could have been able to do it on my own just with reading the book.
Yeah. And I
I
think that's
found the program helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people get scared about, and when they hear intuitive eating, there's a lot of misconceptions, and a lot of people think, number one, that it's just eat whatever you want whenever you want, right? So throw all of those rules out the window, and now, like, it's a free for all. And so, of course, when people do it on their own and they don't have that structure, and that's another myth that people think about intuitive eating, is that there's no structure. And you know me, I am also a numbers girl. And you saw in the program, like, structure is my thing, because I want you guys to know every step of the way, because it's not just like you have 10 principles of intuitive eating, and some people don't know what order to tackle them in, and they don't know how long to spend on each of those principles. And that's why, like, on our calls, I always make sure that I talk to you individually to see, where do you need to place your attention and your focus, because where you're at in your journey might not be the same as Tanya next door, who has been struggling with something entirely different. So I think that fear of, like, it's just going to be a free for all is a very real fear. And so what was the driving factor that made you decide, I need to do a program that's going to help me do this right?
It was really wanting to invest in myself, like thinking of, and I kind of took this as school, right? Like, I was following a program. I pretty well came to all the calls. I've done the modules, like, I've read the book. But it was really an investment in myself and in my future. So I was seeing it as time to try something different. What I've been doing for 20 plus years hasn't provided the results, quote unquote, that I've wanted.
Yeah.
And, it's time to try something different. And having the freedom to socialize, to go out to eat without having the guilt, without having all of the extra stuff that comes with it, has been really, really life changing. It's not something that I would have been able to do on my own. Like I said, I read the book, and I started reintroducing things, but it was like too much too fast. I mean, the program's not just the eating part. It's the developing habits. It's other things, like the coaching aspect of it, right, is what you don't get just from a book.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's really what I needed, was someone to kind of hold my hand, to kind of start me on this path.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like, the habits and all of these things, I find that it was so great. And I'm starting to do things again that I hadn't done in such a long time, and some new things that are more out of my comfort zone. But, you know, why not try?
Yeah, it's so true what you said. Like the coaching is something entirely different because if I wanted to become a piano player and I read a book on like how to become a piano player, I would suck still. And there's a reason why you need someone who's going to look at your technique, who's going to look at, okay, this is what you're doing right, this is what you're doing wrong, and let's give you some action steps to fix it.
Mhm.
And what were some of the biggest breakthroughs or the biggest things that you learned that you can look back on it now and be like, oh my God, I'm so happy that I learned this, or I'm so happy that this is part of my life now?
I mean, to kind of take it day by day, right? And we talked about that recently was, you know, even if you have a time like last weekend, there was a lot of things going on and there was a lot happening, but it's like, okay, in the grand scheme of things, these 2 days over the next 40 years of your life, usually if I would have had like a quote unquote bad weekend of eating things that I, might not, more sugar, more things that you're not accustomed to, it would have been one of two extreme reactions: either super restrict after to make up for my indiscretions, or it would have been a downward spiral of eating everything in the pantry for like a good week until I almost felt sick to my stomach, and then it would have been restricting.
Yeah.
So, you know, thinking of those instances in a larger scale. Like if you have one meal and you're going somewhere and you want to enjoy yourself and you want to have the cheesecake or the ice cream, okay,
Hmm.
what does it change in 2 weeks time that you had ice cream, right? So it's these things, but also looking at the goal, like why did you join the program, right? And that's what I found, like the accountability part of it, having action steps, it really helped me stay focused. And I will say that the habits, like linking a new something that you want to try or you want to add to your daily routine to something you already do.
Hmm.
So, and I've started doing that, and it seems like such an easy concept, but it's been really something that's changed like the last month of my life. It's like, I actually can do this. Like if I add my morning workout, and also the idea that it doesn't have to be an hour, right? Like that was always, it was like an all or nothing mentality. If you can't do something for at least 45 minutes, it's not worth it. But at the same time, 15-minute Pilates is better than 15 minutes scrolling on my phone. So
Yeah.
there's been a lot of those type of epiphanies, and it's things that logically, but
You need to
build.
hear them from someone else.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. And them up here, but
You
in
don't
your
feel them.
heart.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the habits I think has been really, really good because I'm starting to do things, and it doesn't feel forced. It's adding on to things that I already do. So it's coming naturally, and it's developed. It was like starting to floss your teeth. The dentist needed to tell me for years. And finally, when I started doing it, now it's like I can't go to bed without having flossed my teeth, right? So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. But yeah, those were definitely the takeaways for me.
Hmm. And I always tell you guys how much I love the habit piece because I think that's one thing that is missing from most intuitive eating programs and the intuitive eating book is they don't really teach you about your brain. Like they don't really teach you about how to, like, imagine you bought a computer, but you had no idea how to use it. So then you have a computer that is so powerful. And if you know how to use it and you know how to program it and you know how the system works, you could literally do anything with this computer. But our brains act as that kind of computer, but we're never set up with an instruction manual. And so we have this brain that literally just runs our lives in the background and we never know how to use it. And so when I started learning about how powerful our brains were and how you can start using your brain instead of it using you, I was like, oh my God, this is missing. This piece is missing because when you learn how to use your brain to form new habits, to change the way that you think on a daily basis, it doesn't just apply to food. It doesn't just apply to exercise. It applies to literally any habit that you want to make or break in your life.
Well, and it made it so it was almost natural, right? Like, oh, okay, well, I want to incorporate movement at the beginning of my day. Okay, well, what do you do usually? Okay, well, this is my routine. Add that here.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's just been so seamless, and it's not something, because I've worked out in the morning before, and that was, my 1 or 2 workouts a day, and it was, begrudgingly getting out of bed, and it was, swearing softly at the screen while I was doing it, and hating every moment. But now it's like, listen, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and it's just a seamless transition. You get up, you get dressed, you go, you do the things that, my normal routine, you tag that on, and it was so effortless. And that was shocking to me,
Mhm.
how effortless it was when you added it to something you already do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a small thing. But like, and that's what I always explain to my clients is like in the program, you get so much, right? You get the coaching, you get the community, you get the Facebook group, you get all of the trainings. And like in the trainings, you will find anything that you're struggling with, you will find it. And sometimes it's going to be that one piece that out of all of that, that could make the world of a difference for you. And I'm curious, like when you joined the program, what was your ultimate wish? What were you hoping? What were the things you were struggling with the most that like if I were to ask you by the end of our 3 months together, what do you want to have happened? What were those things for you?
Well, I did want to incorporate more movement in my day. And, I have a job where it's not always easy. Like I don't always have, a set amount like for lunch or things like that. It can be busy, but the idea of it doesn't need to be a 1 hour walk. Like it can be, so, just having those reassurances, I guess, or those type of conversations. So that was one thing. My ultimate why was to live a long, happy, healthy life. Like that was what I wanted from the program, what I want for the rest of my life. So I did certainly want to incorporate more movement. I wanted to be able to get rid of the idea that I need to plan out my day, my week, my based around all of my meals. And, if I have a carb at breakfast, it means I can't for the rest of the day. So, I only have like one certain things. And it's like, where does it fit? And then, just being able to have a more natural relationship with food and not have to plan everything around it.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely had some body image work to do as well.
Yeah.
And
And now that you are almost at the end of the program, uh, how would you describe where you're at now compared to 10 weeks ago?
I'm definitely much farther along. And this past weekend was a perfect example. Like Monday came around, it was like, whatever, like it's, I'm back to my regular routine, and there was no guilt, there was no shame, there was no self-loathing that comes from having, had that piece of cake. It was
Yeah.
just moving on. And, Monday I had fruit and vegetables.
And I know that you mentioned on our group coaching call too, like you can't remember the last time that you overate until a point that you were sick and bloated and uncomfortable. Like that's something that's that so many people in the program struggle with is overeating. That feeling of like after restriction, you just binge on everything in sight. And that's something that we've been working on, especially when it comes to sweets. And I actually remember you telling me, like, I'm eating just one little chocolate egg after lunch, and that's it. And I'm able to walk away. Like, do you feel like you trust yourself around food more?
Oh, definitely. Definitely that's been a huge change. Like I've been able to buy things, and because my husband, has never had, he doesn't have the same body image issues, or, he'd never dieted or never did any of that. And he's got a physically demanding job. So, he's in a normal body size and all of that. So, you know, he would want things in the house, or he would buy things, and then it would be like, oh, but you can't eat them in front of me. Like, you can't sit there and crunch chips at night and, without my needing to eat some. But I mean, that at this point, like, we've had stuff, and he had a lot more, quote unquote, self-control than
Yeah.
I did. Like, the bags could sit in the pantry for days and not be, especially working from home. Since the pandemic, that is something that was difficult because I was home all the time,
Hmm.
right? And many hours by myself. So I would just eat out of boredom.
Yeah.
And, now it's like we have all these things, and sometimes I want some, sometimes I don't. And it's fine either way.
Yeah. And
So
how does that feel for you to be able to just trust yourself around food?
it's a bit surreal to still think about it, right? Because it's still kind of new. But I can almost, it's so different. It's so different. And it's something that I had never been able to do, because with all of the restricting, if I had anything that I loved, and for me, it was sweets. I couldn't have stuff in the pantry because I would want to eat them all the time. But yeah, it's been totally life changing, I'll say.
Yeah. And now what are you the most excited about for the next 40 years of your life? Like knowing what you know now and knowing what you're capable of, what are you the most excited for?
Just to be able to live how I feel, normally a person should, right? Not having to think about everything around what I used to before leaving the house, right? Like, what am I going to eat? Like, I should bring a snack, or because I can't have whatever, if we're going somewhere, I need to bring my own food because I can't have what they're having there. And if we end up being too late, like, what are we going to do for supper? And like, it was all of these things all of the time. Missing out on events because you don't want to go because they're probably going to be taking pictures and posting them on Facebook. God forbid,
Mm.
that would happen. And then people would see that I've put on weight or whatever, and people will judge what I'm. So it's all of these things that, you end up isolating yourself from these fun activities because you don't want the attention on yourself, or you think that everyone is looking at you when really it's like, who cares, right? You're
Yeah.
just another person, and it's, everyone. And it's so true that even when I was in my smaller body, still had the same self-conscious issues, and you still have all of that as well, right? So
Mhm.
it ends up being the same
Yeah.
no matter your pant size.
Yeah, for sure. And if you could go back and give your younger self advice, or someone who is where you were at, and there's that fear, right? Like at that point of diet rock bottom, I can't do this anymore. And then there's that block, that fear of the unknown. What piece of advice would you give to that person?
I think if it's someone that would be considering, doing things differently, which intuitive eating is, it's completely different than all of the commercials you see on TV and on Facebook and
Yeah.
everywhere. Um, to, the structure is good. It was very intimidating to think of doing it by myself. Um, there are definitely things that you can look at or buy, or more books, or all of these things, but um, I think for me, having the coaching, as intimidating and as scary as it is, because I know it was, there was a lot of
Mm.
emotions, when I was considering it, but it it definitely for me was for the better. And I would say that to someone that's considering it. Um, Having the structure was very important for me. I don't think I would have gotten the same out of just a book, or just podcast, or just
Yeah.
As far as the program was concerned.
Yeah. Well, do you have any final pieces of advice, of wisdom, of inspiration, for anyone who is not only just considering the program, but like is just scared? They're scared, terrified of either gaining weight or losing control, and they're so set in this like old diet mentality that it's keeping them stuck.
I think it's normal to be scared, like, because it's unknown territory, right? For anyone that's been dieting for years, like, this is a complete 180. Like, it's completely different than anything. And I never thought, and I remember seeing the videos like on your website, or like the testimonials, and it was like, once you're capable of having free reign of your kitchen, your pantry, your fridge, you will want healthy food. And that's so true. And an analogy I told my husband, I remember when we moved in together back when after university, the first like month was hot dogs, pizza, mac and cheese, like just everything. Who needs meat and vegetables? Because that's what we had at our parents' house, right?
Yeah.
But at one point, it was like calling my parents, okay, how long do you need to cook a roast for? You know what I mean? At one point, you want the vegetables and you want something. It's totally that way, right?
That
Like,
is such a good analogy.
I remember, like, it was just all of the fun foods that we, would get on occasion at our parents' house, right? It was like all
Yeah.
of that. At one point, no, you want to start, and that's the way it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it was for me in the program. And not that I didn't believe it would happen for me, but at the same time, it's like, well, if I can have the choice between broccoli and chocolate, like, who's gonna go for the broccoli? But at the same time, it's like there's a time and a place for everything.
And that's where that gentle nutrition piece comes in, that it's not just about I feel a craving, I honor the craving, and that's it. There's the thinking process behind it all. And that's another piece that is like important for people to understand, is that intuitive eating is not just I listen to my cravings, I listen to my body, and nothing else matters.
No,
Other
exactly.
pieces matter.
That's at first, that's what you kind of think. It's like, well, no, I'm going to want like everything. And that's all what no, I go out and I buy my fruit and vegetables, and that's what I still have the chocolate in the pantry, and sometimes that's what it's going to be. But more often than not, it's going to be things, because, the program does make you consider, when you're doing the worksheet and things, like how you feel after you eat.
Yeah.
Right. And you feel better after you eat a well-balanced meal compared to, chips and chocolate for lunch. Right. So
Yeah,
it's definitely some of those things that stick. Right.
for sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience, because I know that I've been where you were a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to thousands of women who are at that same spot, and a lot of people will let fear stop them. And then you end up staying in your comfort zone, which is that diet comfort zone. And the sad thing about comfort zones is that it's very uncomfortable. It's that analogy of like, I'm not even going to try to go into it because it's a long story and I'm probably going to mess it up. But I really thank you for sharing your story, for sharing everything that you've learned. And I'm sure that this is going to be very valuable for anyone who is where you were a couple of weeks ago. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.